All right, so just want to say hello and welcome everybody to the current session entitled Barbershop, a conversation on Black men and mental health. I'm Kim Stokes, currently a doctoral student in counseling psychology and an intern through Black Mental Wellness. We are so glad to have all of you here today, and I'm really glad to be supporting within this session. I have the pleasure of introducing to you our incredible speakers for today's session. Our moderator is Steve Johnson III. He is a master relationship cultivator and also has over 15 years of experience in advertising and marketing. He is also the creator and host of the SMFH podcast, which actually stands for something a little different than what you may think, but I'll let him talk about that more. For our dynamic panelists today, we have Eric Dixon, who's trying to get in. We should see him in a moment. He is a master barber and he is a mental health advocate in our community. We also have Felix Lopez. He is a first-year psychology master's student at the School for Social Research. And we have James Harris. He's the founder of he's the founder of Men to Heal movement, and he's the owner of the Healing Hub. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Steve. Thank you all for joining us today.
All right, Kim, thank you so much for that introduction. And James, Felix, let's go, fellas. All right, so we're here today. Again, this is the barbershop session, Black mental health, and obviously it's male focused, but if we have some ladies in the room, that's appreciated too. But James and Felix, first question I want to lob out to you guys, because I know we only got 50 minutes, so I want to make sure we are efficient with our time. But number one, what does it mean to be a Black man in America in 2020? That's the first question I'll lob out. Whoever wants it first, go ahead.
Oh, it's definitely fun and inspiring because right now, to me, to be honest with you, all eyes are on us. So I'm a Black man, but I'm also a therapist. So I can see the overwhelming support that's coming from men, families, whether it's their wives or teammates or children, to push the urgency of reconstructing what it is to be Black, as far as pushing, other Black men into therapy or overall wellness. So pretty much right now is definitely a great time. And that's what my movement does too, Mental Heal, which focuses on men's overall wellness. So I'm fortunate, to not only be an African-American man, but to be in the forefront of assisting other men, what it's like, to walk in that positivity and, gain insight from their community and the people around them.
And Felix?
I think for me, there are multiple layers behind that question about being a Black man in America. I think the first thing I think about is that when I step outside and I see a Black man, I often pray that they get home safe. I often think about what their families are like, and I almost have this experience or this embodied experience that Black man can be me, or I can be that Black man. And so in the television screens or in social media, there is that totalizing that I have with that Black man and that experience where I'm like, I just hope that you're going to be okay today. And sometimes that's unfortunate for me to be thinking that way, but that's a reality. And then also the layers of me being queer. What does that look like for me being a Black man and also being queer in this society where I have to sometimes be vigilant of maybe uncertainty, of violence, but also feel invisible at the same time, and having that juxtaposition of almost masking and unmasking of being that Black man or being that queer man. Where can I do that? What situation? And there's all these layers that sometimes can be compounding. And so coming into the self and thinking about, like, where do I ground myself so that I can see and I can be the best Black man that I can be, not only for myself, but also for my community. And so that really gets me up in the morning. That really gets me to see, like, who am I going to inspire today? How am I going to inspire myself today? Is it through this walk? Is it through that Post-it note that I wrote 2 nights ago, where I was tired of studying and said that you can do it? What is it going to be for me to inspire other Black men to be like, it's going to be okay, and give them that strength so that we can turn those tables?
Yep. Yeah, no. Hey, appreciate that answer. Definitely both of you and James. Eric, Hey, we have Eric Dixon in the building, so I want to make sure we lob this question out to Eric as well. Eric, the question I had thrown out to both James and Felix, just getting the conversation started, man. What does it mean to you to be a Black man in America in 2020?
Well, for starters, I want to say hey to everybody. Sorry for me being late. It's just been a crazy day.
No problem. We in the barbershop.
Yeah,
good.
What does it mean for me being a Black man in 2020? 2020 showed me a lot. I was definitely tested, and it showed me so much of how, just off from how I feel, the world, they really don't value us like we should. It's just I feel like we're looked at as we put like how we've been looked at for years as we just a life that just be thrown away, and just how the media portrays us. And honestly, I've experienced fear this year. And it's crazy, and I really had to go through that. And just talking to a lot of the brothers that I cut, I was just like, man, how am I feeling this way in the world, in a country that we're supposed to be free? And it's just like, man, like this is like, how did you get to this point in 2020? But also it also shows a lot of unity amongst us as Black men. I feel a real shift with us, and a real unity with us when as Black men now. It's like we know now that we only have each other. We can only depend on each other, and the world constantly shows like they're going to be against us. So that's now like from me having the type of platform I have for my clients and the guys that I run into, man, and just having a conversation. I now know that because everything is against us, we only have each other now, and it opens up more of a conversation for us to basically be to support each other and have each other's back.
Yeah.
But it is a scary time, but I think this is an eye opener for us as Black men as well.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. And before we move on to the next question, I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen that are in the building with us right now, again, this is the barbershop session, Black men and mental health. Feel free to drop questions on the side. Okay, even though we're having this conversation, we're gonna try our best to get to all the questions that you ask. And also, I just want to call attention right now. James just dropped his information on the side, so please check out his website. That's www.men2heal.com. He has a YouTube link, his book, and the social media at that website. So please check that out. Felix, I want to come back to something you said, though, when you were giving your explanation. You mentioned the fact that being a Black man and also a queer Black man in America in this day and age, and I feel it's applicable to just being a Black man in general, but you're sort of walking this gray area where it's, you're trying to manage, being vigilant and making sure that you're staying safe at every turn. But then on the flip side, it's almost like to the larger America at large, you're invisible as a person. Like, how do you grapple with that, with that dichotomy, like coming to terms with like, at one point I got to make sure I stay on my toes everywhere I'm at. But then on the other side, realizing, well, I don't even know that people are actually seeing me for who I am. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I just found on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like, I think one thing I always want to acknowledge about my upbringing too is that I was brought up in the Bronx, in South Bronx, and low economic environment, gang violence, etc. And it was this narrative that we see often in the media, but it really did triculate into this like machismo or masculinity that I had to present to this world of, I have to be this way. I have to be tough. I have to be this certain context. I cannot cry. I cannot do all these things. And in hindsight, what I'm realizing now is that it impacted my mental health so much that by the time I was like in my late teens, early 20s, it impacted my mental health so much that I had to go to a hospital. And that in that realization, I had to realize I had to finally come out. And that trajectory there was like, wait a minute, this toxic masculinity that I learned and was ingrained in my formative years impacted the way that I became as an adult, to the point that I didn't know who I was anymore. And so in light of that, I had to learn to be the friend of someone who was queer. Who was that queer Felix? Who was that queer Felix that was navigating towards that world? And I had to like learn how to build a relationship with both of them and know that they don't have to be mutually exclusive, and that they can be in unison, that I can still like certain aspects that might be gendered into the male construct, but also like things that are constructed to be this female gender, but they could be both. There is no binary.
It's like that, both things can be right at the same time.
Exactly. And so just loving those two things at the same time.
Cool. No, I appreciate that explanation. And James, a question I wanted to lob out to you. Obviously, we mentioned mentoheal.com right out of the gate. And you've been doing that for a long time. And we appreciate everything you're doing, brother. One question I did want to ask you specifically was just around the empathy gap around Black men and how that might impact their mental health. Because obviously your mission is to help us heal, but where have you seen that lack of that empathy that we typically receive being Black men? We're supposed to be tough. We're not supposed to show any emotion. We're supposed to just suck it up and keep going forward in life when we have all this outside trauma that we constantly deal with. How do we reconcile that in our day-to-day going about? And what have you seen from your own experience, just dealing with Men to Heal and running your program?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to have started my program for the past couple of years, maybe 3 or so. And I think it's definitely important that we highlight the fact of a strong support system, because tentatively, like so many African Americans, not just the men, deal with unresolved grief, unresolved trauma, and they don't know how to recognize it because they become numb and desensitized. So with the support system, we definitely have to ensure that we have people that we can rely on, a strong, whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether that's coworkers, and we have to be able to be vulnerable enough to open up around these people so, they can validate our feelings, they can accept us for who we truly are, whether that is being queer or whether that is, just dealing with the society pressures and stuff like that. So, and those are some of the main critical points, because people tend to feel now that they don't have those outlets, especially for men. They don't feel that they can go to that lady and express themselves or be open enough, because they probably throw it back at them. They're probably, equate that vulnerability to be a weakness and want a real man, or just, you might get clowned by your boys and stuff like that. So we have to create a safe space. We have to ensure that we're nurturing men just as well as much we nurture women. And we definitely got to start at the beginning. It's a young boy right now who's probably want to come out or probably want to cook or bake opposed to play physical sports. So we have to adapt to that. We have to let people be free opposed to trying to close them off. And I think also a lot of people feel that being Black is monolithic, like it's one way to be Black, or it's one way to be a man. It's one way to be a woman. Like, no, it's, diversity, inclusion, and openness and acceptance is definitely important and critical, especially in the times now, because we need to rely on each other. We need to know, like, oh, he got my back. He looks like me. He acts like me. He's from where I'm from. He potentially experienced what I've experienced. Or he may have no idea, but I can use him as an ally. I can help him understand, or he can see things my way, or we can figure it out together, opposed to, shutting everybody out and just wearing the burdens ourselves. So those things are definitely important. So whether it's establishing a strong support system, finding allies who look like you, or finding people who can pretty much get on the same page and assist you with opening up, being vulnerable, and accepting yourself as well as you.
Yeah. Hey, James, thank you for that. Hey, Danielle, I don't know that you're supposed to be sharing your audio and video right now, but I'm going to just throw that out there. You'll figure it out. Hey, Eric, one question. Hey, we got a question on the side, Eric, and I wanted to throw this to you, because obviously what you do on the day-to-day, I'm sure you have these conversations, just in your own environment. But, the media is always attempting, to push this divide between Black men and Black women. What is your stance on that? And is there anything that you see that we could potentially do, to help alleviate that, or at least try to stop that? Because it is getting to a point now where it's ridiculous and it's so blatant on every platform. So I just want to ask you a on that?
It's funny that you said that because I just had this conversation with a client about that. Somehow, social media is real tedious because, even at the same time when it's like, even though it's good in certain cases, but at the same time, it's a platform where you have a lot of broken people who express, broken views on, social media. And it basically, after a while, when you constantly see multiple people doing that, it plants the seed and it's always a negative image of us and how we are with our women or how our women are with us. And, and this is just my opinion. Sometimes I think it's good to take social media for what it is, but I think what we need to do, let's say as far as us with our women and vice versa, I think we need to get back to how things were. I think we forgot what that was before social media was even a thing. Where it was we had more of a connection with each other, and it just I think a lot of people would just express their point of views a lot on social media, where it seems like it's a lot of bashing and vice versa. But then a lot of that come from what we're taught, especially us as men, how we are with our women. We do. I mean, I think you guys can agree with me too. We do have some guys who are telling us the wrong thing about our women, and that could come from us.
That's for something poignant being said.
Yeah, and it's the wrong information we getting, and it's just what the world is just putting out there for us, and it's like it's teaching us to dislike each other or hate each other, and then over time when you constantly get this put in your mind, you be thinking this really in real life, like, oh, this is how we feel about our women, this and that. I think we need to get back to knowing how to love and know how to appreciate each other, know how to love our women. Women want to be loved by us, but and vice versa. But we lost it along the way somehow. Yeah. And I think social media, we get caught up in all the stuff that's not real, and all the stuff that we think is love or what is showing love, and it's not really. It's not real. It's just a world of social media where we think this is supposed to be. And I tell people sometimes it's good to take a healthy break from social media and getting back to the love. And everything don't have to be expressed on social media when it comes to how you feeling about a situation, because that can be turned into something else and then that travels on. I think it's important for us to take a healthy break from social media to get back to how we used to be, how we used to communicate with each other, how we used to hang with each other without social media being a thing, and actually communicating and learning and really appreciating each other, for who they are. But just, when your social media gets involved, it just, we put on the facade, then there's a lot of pain getting dispersed, and then that triggers other people, and then it just causes this big chaos. I think it's important for us to have a healthy break away from social media and to get back to really looking each other in the face and having a conversation, learning and talking and experiencing each other. And
you're absolutely right. I mean, social media, for as good as it is definitely once you reach a certain level, it's certainly a detriment there. To your mental health, to your overall physical, everything. Like social media, people don't realize how much it actually affects you with everything that you do. But you made a point too, Eric, just now, where you were talking about the need for women wanting to feel love, and I want to flip that on the other side to apply to our conversation right now. We want to be loved too.
Exactly.
Okay? We want to be loved too. And I'm gonna use myself as an example right here, and I'm gonna throw it out to the group. But my wife and I, we're going on 10 years married next year.
Oh, congratulations, bro.
Yeah. But for a long time in our relationship, I would say probably the first 7-8 years, I didn't know how to tell her or express to her that I was looking to be loved too. I knew I had to go outside of my way to make sure flowers for no reason, spa visits for this, that, and the third, Valentine's Day, anniversary, birthday, you're good. I didn't know how to necessarily tell her, though, that I want some of that affection too.
Yeah.
I want to feel loved too.
Yeah.
And I think James made the point earlier. A lot of times men, we sort of just suffer in silence and continue pushing forward without actually saying or feeling comfortable about expressing what we feel. So I just want to lob that out to the group, to all three. And James, I feel like this is right up your alley, brother.
Yeah,
but
man.
Like,
and so
fellas not being able to express that. Like, how do we get over that hump?
So, I, to be honest with you, I think that's probably why I was selected to be on this panel. So, ladies, gentlemen, whomever is tuning in, definitely go to my YouTube page. There's so many videos on there that can help you. And I also am the author of Man, Just Express Yourself, which is an interactive planner guide for boys and men to better express themselves. And to be honest with you, man, I want to apologize that you were in that position to where you were unable or didn't feel comfortable enough to go to your partner and express these things. So again, I think we have to create that narrative around our relationships and the people that we surround ourselves with, that we would know, like, it's okay for me to be vulnerable and open with you, and you accept that. You'll validate my feelings. You will allow me to express myself or accept me for my expression. And I think that's definitely important. And we also have to understand too that communication is a two-way thing. It's the giver of the message and the receiver of the message. So we have to understand or assist somebody in comprehending what we're trying to relate to them. So you may have, did things to, I guess, incite or alert your wife, that, hey, I want to be praised or loved or validated in a certain way, but she didn't comprehend or understand what you was trying to relate. So until you verbally articulated it, that's when she was able to catch it. So I think, for the man that's here or the women that's here, sometimes you have to just say what you want, but you also have to get that feedback and ask them, do they understand, do you understand what I'm trying to relate to you, opposed to assuming that they know. Or I think, like, when I do couples counseling, this is what I see all the time. This is what I'm doing. I want you to do what I'm doing for you. But if that's not how I model. That's not how I show my love. So that's the difference in how we are. People feel like I'm doing to you what I want you to do to me. No, love is different. Love is more of an action. Like, I show my love my way. I have to ensure that I pick the partner who accepts the way I show love, and vice versa. Hopefully she shows love the way I want my love to be shown, so I can accept that love and understand it. So it's definitely important and vital that we do that, but we definitely have to open up and express ourselves. And I think the way we were raised, or most men were raised from a young age, to hold it in or to, not display it, because, you get those stigmas and things like that. But I think now we have to break those things. But most importantly, we have to surround ourselves with people who will allow us to express ourselves without being demonized or without being chastised for expressing vulnerability. That acceptance piece and that accountability piece, so I have to take it upon myself to say, you know what, this is on my heart. I'm going to put it out there. And if they don't care or they don't take it, then, that's the way it is. But we have to, recognize that within ourselves. And again, surround yourself with somebody who's going to validate you and uplift you, opposed to enabling you and gaslighting you. Those things are important. So get you a strong support system, whether that is your partner, your wife, your co-workers, or your teammates.
No, James, that was great. And quick shot, fellas, real quick, we got to give a shout out to Christine Kills, because I don't know if y'all can see her on the side in the comments, but she is celebrating 42 years of marriage. Woo! So Christine, I'm trying to get to your level one day. But definitely 42 years of marriage. And she also asked James how she can obtain your book. And Christine, if you scroll up on the comment side, James dropped his website. But again, to repeat, is www.men2heal.com. Go there. Check out all of his info. Go ahead, James. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Christine, definitely scroll up and get that. But since you've been married 42 years, you guys are probably comfortable or complacent within your marriage. So your husband might be stuck in his ways. So I'm going to give you a little tidbit. Get this book, give it to him. He'll do a couple pages, and then you guys do it as an exercise of a date night. Because other than that, you might get met with resistance.
That is good.
You might get met with resistance, because he might feel like, what, you want me to change? You want me to do? No, but if you do it that way, he'll think it's a way for you guys to enhance your relationship, opposed to work on himself. And I think that's where a lot of women get caught up. Like, dang, if I just know what he was thinking, or if I say this, he gonna get mad. No, all right, so let's break those barriers. So you get the book, you give it to him, he do a couple pages, he give it back to you. You guys exchange dialogue over dinner or a date night or something like that. So that way, it's a tool to enhance you guys' relationship opposed to just him. You don't want him to feel victimized or called out. You know, some people do have fragile egos. Hopefully, that's not your husband of 42 years.
Not after 42 years.
Hey man, it's you never know. Some people
never know.
Some people can be stand for the kids, or some people can be stand because they can't financially handle it themselves. So I just want to put that out there. But hopefully that's not her situation. Hopefully Mr. Kills is a dope man and who's gonna grab to the book, and they guys, you know, continue to grow and excel. You make it another 42.
Right. Well, look, let's definitely set that up. Christine, we're going to come back to you one day for a follow-up. I want to see if you actually followed up and hit up James' platform and make this happen, because we need that. Hey, look, Felix and Eric, I'm going to do a 2-for-1 with this question, because I want both perspectives on this. You know, but one of the things, and I before we move on, another shout out, because Kawan Glover put on the side the art of communication. So just to put a button on everything that James just mentioned when it comes to men and women, and that just coming to that understanding, the art of communication is that key point that we need to take away. That's what we all need to work on going forward, the art of communication with ourselves and with our partners, whoever that might be. But yeah, Felix and Eric, right now, and I think you touched on it too, Eric, earlier, Felix, was just what do you both see as the impact right now of toxic masculinity running rampant within the African-American community? You know, and then like speak to the effects of that, but mainly obviously with the mental health space. I want to stay focused on that, but just, you know, that toxic masculinity. And I think you touched on it earlier, Felix, but yeah, you know, I want, Felix and Eric, jump in on that, please.
Felix, you go ahead and take the floor, brother.
It's interesting. So when I think about toxic masculinity, I think about it in two sectors. There is a heterosexual toxic masculinity, and then there is that queer toxic masculinity. How does that translate into the queer space, where certain queer folk don't want to be with certain queer folk because they're too effeminate? They want to be with like men or with women or with those who are gender non-binary, who have this certain characteristic that feels more masculine, that is more masculine because it presents a certain strength or protection or attraction. And so how does that toxic masculinity that stems from that heterosexual space has also been into that queer space? So that's like a lot of the things that I've been thinking about, and how that translates into the mental health sector, at least in my experience, is almost confining my certain aspects of myself, because I don't think that would be deemed worthy in society. What does it look like to be in certain spaces where I can't be my authentic self? And how that also limits my own mental health. And in relating to what James said, in those aspects of relationships, that can also be seen true with queer relationships, like with my partner, where that vulnerability aspect, based on how we grew up as cisgendered men, we were supposed to be this masculine, tough exterior. And how does that translate now that we are openly gay Black men? What does it look like navigating that world? What does it look like when we're trying to communicate and trying to unlearn the mechanisms of the traumas that we've been instilled from our family? And that is through these open communications and dialogues of relationship checkups. So like, all right, so like this week, how were we today? Like, what was our communication? Like, what was this? Like, what is our style? And really looking at feedback as a way to love on each other and love on ourselves, and not as a way to blame each other. And kind of eradicating that toxic masculinity of do it one point to one point. Like, oh, I did this better, so I must love you better. No, like, it's like we love on each other through the small acts.
Right. Yeah. And Eric.
And I'm gonna be very transparent about this, because I grew up, honestly, majority of my life around toxic masculinity. I was taught a lot of toxic masculinity growing up, to the point where, you know, you carry it with you as a man, and then the fact that you don't, and the fact that you didn't have anybody to guide you the right way, it ruined a lot of relationships for me because of my toxic masculinity. I didn't know how to express myself, or you know, and communicate. My communication was horrible because I felt like, okay, nah, I ain't gonna talk about that. I ain't gonna show no weakness. I ain't gonna try to look like a punk out here. I'm not trying to show that I'm weak and I'm soft or whatever, you know, may have you.
Definitely relate to
And
that.
yeah, you know, and I grew up like this majority of my life. And I had to get on as I got older. I had to step back and I had to look like, man, look at all the stuff I've ruined. Like it ruined even friendships. But you know, it's so many things I could have fixed a long time ago, but I chose not to because I didn't want to look like a punk.
Yeah.
And I ruined relationships. And then of course, like I said, these are people that was around me that was teaching me this. And even from the conversations and us as guys, I know we have been around guys who just, you know, it's sometimes it can come with peer pressure as well. It's a lot of stuff, man. It's just the way you express yourself. And it's just like we don't have that comfort to express how we really truly feel about certain stuff. But we put on this facade that's not really us. And we react, and then it ruins everything. Then we sit back like, man, why did I do that? Why do I feel this way? And it's not who we really are, but it just the way the world is when it comes to toxic masculinity, man. It's like we don't want to look a certain way, we don't want to come off a certain way, you know. And you know, until I got older and I started going to therapy because I didn't have the answers of why I was doing some of the things I was doing, and then I learned to really be comfortable with myself and be comfortable with my thoughts. And if I feel a certain way, being comfortable expressing it, no matter who's around, I don't care what man is around, you know, this is how I feel. This is my views about this. Not because I got to put on a mask of this masculinity to prove my dominance or prove that I'm a man. Like that has nothing to do anything, you know? So and I think a lot of men and a lot of young boys now today are going through that as well because of what they show out there, what you see in the media, what you see all over. You got to be tough to prove something, you know, and it messes it up in the long run.
Yeah, and James, I see your hand. Go ahead, hop in, man.
Yeah. So you know, before we move on, man, I just want to make sure that I get that out there. But toxic masculinity is a social construct, and to be honest with you, starts at a young age, and it can stunt the emotional maturity of a lot of men. You know, so you can be a 40-year-old boy, and this can happen on both ends.
You got some ladies hype on the side with that one.
Yeah, but since we mentioned it, ladies, a lot of people within society don't feel that women can be toxic, can create toxic masculinity as well, but they can. I had the pleasure of assisting. Can you hear me?
Yeah, preach on it.
Okay, yeah, I had the pleasure of assisting a mother of a 8 to 10-year-old son because she was being toxic within this moment. She didn't allow her son to get this easy bake oven tool thing that he wanted, right? But 2 weeks later, she was in the store with, I guess, this guy that she was dating, and they were in the food section. And he said, "Hey, what do you want to cook? What do you want to get?" Her reply was, "It doesn't matter. You're not going to cook anyway." So that was her reply to the guy that she was dating. But to her young 10-year-old son, she didn't want him to start cooking at that age or get this easy bake oven. So technically, that's a form of toxic masculinity because now that 10-year-old son is going to eventually be that man that she's dating to where, you know, like that's what he's going to adapt to. That's what he's going to learn and overcome.
She inadvertently passed it on.
And she didn't even, you know, recognize it. But so anyway, she wound up apologizing to me and, you know, just was happy to get the insight because subconsciously that's what she was doing. Like your son is going to eventually become this man that doesn't want to cook because you're stunning him now. You know, that emotional maturity is something that happens a lot that people tend to not even recognize. Like, you know, you can be stuck in a moment. You can repress certain things as a young kid, as an adolescent. And I say it all the time when I'm counseling men, you know, they're stuck at a certain point of time, whether that was when a trauma took place or a grief issue took place, or whether they were in a position to where they couldn't express themselves. They were stuck at that moment. We got to move past that moment. And for her, that moment could have been there for her 10-year-old son if she wouldn't allow him to bake or cook, you know, because again, she thinks that's a form of being soft. I don't want my son to be soft. I don't want my son to be gay. I want to play football, whatever. Cooking is a natural thing. Men and women need to know how to cook, you know, and you're asking your 30-plus-year-old man now, it doesn't matter because you're not going to cook anyway. Okay, did he learn how to cook? Was cooking an option for him, or was it the same space that you now creating for your 10-year-old son? So I just wanted to put that out there before we move on, that women can display toxic masculinity as well.
Yeah, no. That's a very good perspective, man. And that information, that we appreciate you sharing that. Hey, look, so all three of you, I'm gonna throw a question out from the side. Whoever wants it can take it. But Brittany, and I hope I don't mess up your last name, Brittany, but I believe that is a lot of Tohum. Brittany, a lot of Tohum. But she asked, how would one help their husband begin to acknowledge his trauma from the past, because it somewhat trickles into the marriage? So I don't know if she's necessarily using herself as an example, but how would one help their husband begin to acknowledge the trauma from the past that is affecting their marriage?
Well, I don't want to like monopolize the conversation, but
go for it.
I counsel men all the time. I counsel men all the time, and I counsel couples all the time. So I'm just fortunate enough to be in this space. But as a therapist, as a partner, as a friend, I can't help anybody who doesn't see an issue with their actions or don't want to be helped. So hopefully he recognizes that he needs assistance, whether that's coming from you as his wife or his coworkers or friends. But again, that trauma has been so unresolved probably for a long time that he become numb and desensitized to it. So to him, it's a common thing. It's part of his livelihood. It's part of his life. It's what he's dealing with or not dealing with in the presentation. And the people around him are vicariously affected. So that's you, the wife, the children, and probably his coworkers or wherever. So what you definitely have to do is create a safe space, create that space for him to be vulnerable and point out his issues or the presentation of how it's not only affecting him, but how it's affecting you guys as a unit, as one. And hopefully he'll be able to gain insight from that and want to make change.
Cool. Felix, you got anything to add to that?
I think based on my experience, and I've not been married yet, but just in relationships, that there's this, it's grace. It's giving grace for that, to allow for that to happen. Giving grace for the person to really acknowledge their trauma, because it might be so profound and so heartbreaking that even acknowledging it can be traumatic itself. What does it look like to just allow for that safe space, like James said, to just say what it is and to allow for time to happen for it to even talk about it slowly? And I think that in itself gives the person, the husband, certain strength or certain comfort to know that they're able to be themselves and that they're not rushed into that process to solve or acknowledge that trauma. Because I think sometimes in mental health, and I'm starting to see this more, is that there's this pressure of you gotta resolve it, and it's like sometimes it takes a little longer than what we think.
Yep. No, and Brittany, I hope that helps, with the question you asked, because I feel like both of those answers were excellent. But James and Felix, I got another one. And Felix, you just used the word grace. So I'm gonna use that as a transition here. We've covered toxic masculinity. We've covered, other resources that men can use to sort of get, past these traumas from early childhood. But also another piece that I want to touch on with using the word grace is racism. So when racism starts to be exposed, as we're young men, I'm sure all of us have, been affected by it at some point or another. But the big thing with racism is that we aren't extended that grace, from those who don't like us just because of the color of our skin, and as young men, I think I remember this vividly. I believe I had my first encounter with racism when I was 11, and I was at the Boys and Girls Clubs, and I was a member in Richmond. So James, I'm talking, I was a member in Richmond, Virginia, the Boys and Girls Clubs. And at my Boys and Girls Club, it was predominantly Black, the kids, the staff, everybody there. I went to another Boys and Girls Club, and I'm not going to go into detail with the entire story there, but I was sort of lumped in as being a bad kid because, the staff at this other Boys and Girls Club was predominantly white. And there were a lot of assumptions made, and I felt that. I didn't know really at the time what that was, but I felt it at 11 years old. So I always go back to that as sort of being my first time being exposed to that. But the question I wanted to ask you both is just with that exposure to racism at such a young age, and then that continued exposure to it as we get older, because it never goes away in this country, unfortunately. But, you know, with us not getting that grace or ever receiving that grace from those that, you know, the powers that be, those in charge, how does that affect, so, you know, that mental health within us, you know, as Black men in this country? You know, I just wanted to throw that question out and see where it went. That was a lot. That was a lot to
I can go for this one.
Go ahead, Felix. Hop in.
I think the first thing that came to my mind was my own internalized oppression as a Dominican man, as a Black Dominican man, as like a Black person in the diaspora. And I think that community can sometimes be like its own set of issues, right? So like I first thought about when I was like thinking about when you were saying your question, like I went back to a memory of 8 years old, and my family's full of like different pigments and skin pigmentations, and I always heard these words of like, oh, you're like little negrito, or like little Black boy, or like, oh, you have bloodlines that are tied to Spain, and like this internalized oppression that continued on not only from like a time I was 8 years old, but all the way till I was like 18, until it took me to Michigan, and how it took these encounters with police to know that like, oh no, like we all Black. So it impacts me the same way, but how these lineages of family can really instill this racism in me to think that I'm something of an other, and almost this oppression Olympics where I'm like, I don't want to be like the other. I don't want to be Black in America. And why was it that I don't want to be Black in America? Is it because what I saw in media, or is it because what I saw in myself in the mirror? And so even before I learned the words of
an internal duel that we don't even recognize is happening.
I didn't even know the words racism until before I knew that I was dealing with myself in not going into the sun in the summer so I don't darken my skin. Like all these little factors and these nuances in trying to hide who I really wasn't, who I really wanted to be, right? And so that mental health in itself, compounded with me being in the closet, like really affected my joy, essentially my joy. And like, and it's sad for me to like really reflect upon that. I was like, wow, how joyful was I really? Because joy really equates to that authenticity. So if I wasn't my authentic self, how joyful was I really? And so I have to grapple with that as an adult. And that also, and the part of that was because of that racism aspect of not only the outside of being in America, but also inside the home with my family trying to be or be part of this American dream.
Yeah. James.
Yeah. So from a mental health standpoint, I think a lot of people, African-American people or minority people dealing with racism within the system creates that imposter syndrome aspect of life. So where a lot of people with credentials are questioning whether they belong in those rooms or in these settings, and or whatever have you. So those are some of the effects, but also the effects of anxiety and trauma itself, because trauma can continue. It is not a one-time thing. Like it can continue. It can be vicarious trauma. It can continue to linger. And with that, you're easily agitated. You're frustrated all the time. You're easily startled. You got those physical symptoms as well. The number one killer right now of African American.
Talking to me right now? Are you talking to me?
I'm putting it out there, bro. The number one killer right now of African American men is heart disease, and heart disease is a form of having too much stress. And a lot of people don't connect it to because they still think the mind and body is separated. So we definitely have to ensure that we're taking care of ourselves. But that trauma is definitely an impactful thing. Heart disease is a form of stress, and that stress is a form of that can result from trauma or depression and stuff like that. So mental health is definitely important to recognize.
Yeah. No. Hey, James and Felix, man. I mean, this information, people on the side saying how powerful it is. So I hope y'all see that. Eric, we were just talking about the effects of racism, among Black men, and how we deal with that at such an early age and how that lingers throughout our lives. And as we continue to get older, certainly want to add you to this conversation and get your perspective on that.
Sorry about that. I had a little mishap with the phone. Sorry.
You're good, brother. We in the barbershop. No explanation necessary. No, just wanted to get your point of view on, like, just us being Black men and getting that exposure at such a young age to racism and having to combat that throughout our entire lives. I'm sure all four of us are still combating that now, you know, but like, what is your perspective with how that affects African-American men at a young age and then going through life?
Well, the first time I've ever experienced racism, like full on, was probably when I was 14. And I was racially profiled in one of the worst ways ever. And I had a gun pulled on me by a cop. And, you know, and of course, you know, the person they were looking for was a full grown man, but you know, it just the way they handled me was kind of crazy. And then I didn't understand it because, you know, when you're young, you know, we don't think about these type of things because we're kids, we're innocent.
Right.
You know, we just
so far. You can't even think that deep.
Yeah, you don't think that deep, you know, and you know, it is just kind of like it leaves you confused, like why that happened? Why like I don't understand what's happening. Why they do this to me? I don't understand any of that stuff. That stuff. But then over time, you know, you hear conversations and you know, it kind of plants the seed like, hey, like the world hates us. Like, you know, and then you get older, then you start experiencing life. And then things happen in life as an adult. It then, you know, you start to meet with other brothers and they share other stories with you, you know, and their own personal stories. But it makes you feel like it's a.
Well, I think you froze.
Feeling of we feel unwanted,
back.
You know, and it's just like, and we don't really understand why, you know, and it's been 400 years now. Still don't understand why. And you know, it affects us though, because we look at the you know, the effects of it, you know, far as from us just trying to make it out here, us trying to survive, us trying to, you know, be better men, try to be better fathers, you know, better husbands, and you know, and just kind of work every day. But then we got to work. It's like we feel like we got a target on our back every day. It leaves all types of anxiety at an early age, all the way up into adulthood.
Yeah.
We have to deal with that in a real way. And honestly, I still deal with that. Like racism is so heavy now. Well, it's always have been, but it just, you know, we deal with it now on this scale to the point where, you know, I get anxiety when I hear police siren. Like, right. I really cringe.
That's real.
I cringe. I literally do. And I know I'm not doing enough, but I cringe.
Right.
And I'm just like, dang, we are here. This is what's happening. And, you know, it's the seed that's been planted in us. And it's just like, and honestly, I'm still trying to, you know, figure it out and deal with that, you know, but it's just something that, you know, I think even, you know, my uncles and my grandfather, you know, they dealt with that in a real way, like back in the 60s, the 50s, and so on and so forth. And, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you feel like, man, like, even though you're trying to live, but you always got to watch, like, look over your shoulder, because you just never know because of simply of the color of our skin. It's just something that just doesn't make sense, and it never will make sense. But it's just something that we just, you know, as Black men, we, you know, which I spoke about earlier, man, where, you know, I feel like we only have each other, and this is why it's important for us to each other, us, and be open with each other.
Yeah. Eric, I think we might have lost you again.
We are all.
Well, all right. No, thank you for that. You're breaking up a little bit. I don't want like the video quality to be thrown off. So
okay,
I'm gonna move. Thank you for that response. We really appreciate that. And ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up on the final 10 minutes. So you know, just make sure that any questions you have, you throw them on the side. Again, this is James Harris, Felix, Gabriel, Lopez, Eric Dixon, myself, Steve Johnson III, and this is the Barbershop Black Mental Wellness Virtual Conference. And, you know, one thing that I certainly wanted to just ask as our final question, we've talked about a lot. We talked about toxic masculinity. We talked about racism. We talked about all this baggage that we as Black men carry throughout our lives. But the big question I think that needs to be asked is, how do we get over this stigma of actually taking action to get past that in our lives? Like, how does that become effective? And James, I want to throw that to you just because you deal with that every single day on working with Black men, trying to get past that, get past that stigma. Like, how do we as fellas and brothers, how do we move past that?
So one, we have to continue to accept ourselves for who we are, so we have to nurture and affirm ourselves, whether that's doing affirmations, whether that's, building up your self-esteem and your confidence to recognize that you belong in these spaces, you belong in these rooms, you dope as hell. You got to own your dopeness. And definitely want to ensure that you're surrounding yourself with people who also affirm you and allow you, again, to be vulnerable and free in who you are and accepting. We have to take accountability for who we are as well. So whether that's the positive stuff that we can do, or we have to, make those changes of those maladaptive things that we're doing that can potentially cause harm and stress to ourselves. But again, the outside world or the racism or the stigmas are not our concern. We can't really control what other people think, or if they feel our epidermis, or, the way we look and the way we display our character. That has nothing to do with us. That has everything to do with them. So we have to recognize that. But all we can do is continue to have a positive character, have, positive insight and model a certain behavior that the young ones will want to be able to, display, whether that's within the community, whether in our own homes, our teammates, our partners, and stuff like that. So that's all we can control is what we control, opposed to the perception of others. So we got to definitely ignore the perception of others. And we also have to moderate what we're ingesting within our system, as far as information, because all information is not good information. Whether you're watching these movies where Black men are demonized, or toxic to women or relationships, you got to get away from that. You got to moderate that stuff. Or you're strolling to social media and you're becoming self-conscious on, dang, I'm not a size 6. I'm supposed to be, this is how I'm supposed to be because everybody on social media. No, you got to moderate and eliminate those negative thoughts about yourself. Affirm yourself, believe in yourself, and do things your way. Be authentically who you are.
Yeah, and Felix, what do you have to add to that as far as getting over the stigma of Black men in mental health? Getting help.
I think I want to echo something that I heard at the first session of the day, which was homecoming, where one of the speakers said the embodiment of joy. And I live by that. I live by joy. I choose joy every day. That is a choice that I make every day. And how that's represented is by dancing, by going on my daily walks. And no one's going to stop me from doing my daily walks every day, where I don't take my phone. And for 15 to 30 minutes, I am either by myself or with my partner, and we're walking and we're just enjoying the nature and being human. That I saw something recently by a friend of mine where it said the cycle of the news does not affect my embodiment as a human. That doesn't, I am still a Black man in America. So how and the impact of the news, how do I still become embodied and do that in joy? What do I do to give myself that energy to give to others through the foods that I eat, through the things that I listen to, what James saying, the things that I'm ingesting. And those are the things I share with others. What makes you happy? What gives you that spruce of life? What words do you say to yourself? What are those quotes that you live by? Because those are the things that just keep you going every day, and that's what keeps me going every day. And it's either through my random FaceTime calls with friends, or my letter writing, or my coloring, or things that get me activated to be oh, today was a good day because I know I did this, this, and that, regardless of what else happened.
Yeah. No, and Eric, what do you have to put a bow on that, man?
Yes. Felix, I definitely love that, man. It needs to be more conversation. Do not stop. We need to continue to talk to each other, continue to be open with each other, and still talk about seeing a therapist and understanding that we're not perfect. Understanding that some of our traumas can be fixed. A lot of our traumas can be fixed. Also, taking the time, like I said earlier about social media, taking the time out for you. And I have to pick it back on Felix for that. Just, taking the time, put away the phone, and having some you time. A lot of us lose sight of having us time. for our mental. Being like, whether it's going into a park. Like with me, I cycle. I put my headphones on, I listen to good music, and I go cycling.
Yep.
And it's just me, my music. I meditate, I pray, and I take the time out throughout the day or throughout the week for me. And it helped me learn how to clear your mind. And then also talk to each other about learning how to clear our minds and even having a hobby, getting a hobby and honestly just learning to spend time and enjoy time with yourself and appreciate yourself as a Black man, and also uplifting each other. Always uplift each other, always, and even have sessions with each other where we just, us as Black men, just have conversations about everything else. I mean, other, like, more important things other than women, cars, whatever, the typical. That's how having some conversation about that'll make us feel proud to be Black, make us proud to be Black men, and also understand who and have more conversation about who we are as Black men. And make us comfortable in our own skin and us and being comfortable with us and being Black men as well. I think we need more time to really enjoy life. We forget to do that. We forget to appreciate the small things that actually brings us peace in our life.
Yep. No, and that was great. I mean, that's a great button to put on that conversation. And fellas, I hope Dr. K-Mac doesn't kill me because we definitely went over time. So I appreciate everybody staying with us. And again, we had some questions on the side, and unfortunately, we will not be able to get to those. But we certainly appreciate all of you tuning in to the Barbershop. And hey, we went over time, but that's what happens in the Barbershop. When the conversation is good,
it's good.
So y'all got to bear with us. But no, James, on behalf of James, Felix, Eric, myself, we want to say thank you to everyone for hopping into this session. This conversation, we could have kept going. So I'm going to talk to Dr. K-Mac and see if we can get this going again. Because I got more that I wanted to talk to you brothers about, but we're unfortunately not going to be able to get to it today because of time constraints. But ladies and gentlemen, again, we thank y'all for tuning in. Again, on behalf of James Harris, Felix, Gabriel, Lopez, Eric Dixon, and myself, Steve Johnson III, we appreciate all of you. Again, James posted his information in the chat, www.mentoheal.com. You can go there and get all of his information. Felix, Eric, real quickly, if y'all had anything you wanted to put out there for folks to communicate with you offline.
Yes. You can definitely check out my website at KleanKlutTheBarber.com. That's KleanKlut with K's. On social media, you can reach out to me. I will respond back. You can reach out to my on my social media at KleanKlut_TheBarber. Check me out, man. Let's talk, man. Let's just reach out, man. Let's just have a good, healthy conversation with each other, man. And that's and that's what unite as brothers. James, I'm going to check out your book too, brother.
My man.
Felix.
Yes, I'm gonna definitely check out your book, James. Thank you so much. For me, just you can connect with me via Instagram at the FGL Lab, also on LinkedIn, Felix Gabriel Lopez, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions or just to connect.
All right, perfect. Well, fellas, again, appreciate the time. I enjoyed this conversation. Y'all helped me because at certain points, I felt like all three of y'all were talking to me at one point.
Yeah, we all need each other, man. This is what we need.
We do. And this is what it's about. These conversations just like this. So, again, we're going to have continued conversation with Black Mental Wellness Group, Dr. K-Mac and the gang, and figure out how we can keep this going. Because, outside of us on this forum right here is so many other brothers that need to hear this information. So how can we keep getting that out there? But again, thank you to all three of you for hopping onto this session today. It was my honor to have this conversation and moderate it with the three of you. So with that being said, gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Tune into the rest of the sessions here on the Black Mental Wellness Virtual Conference, From Surviving to Thriving. And ladies and gentlemen, y'all have a good day.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, y'all.
All right.